So that's the introduction. I am Mike Quick. Who is he? That could be complicated, but
I hope it will be.
complicated and then simple all at the same time.
Even
Yeah,
better.
yeah. So it's interesting when I walk the streets of Philadelphia, the attention, the acknowledgement that I get constantly. And I think if you're not a person that's grounded in some way, that all of that stuff can really ruin a person. And I have seen it
Mm,
ruin many young people. But I'm a kid who grew up in a little bitty hamlet in North Carolina, one of 9 kids, and my mom actually raised 10 of us. And, from a very humble beginning, and I think all of those things in the way I was brought up, the way I grew up, the things that I dealt with as a kid, I think all of those things play a big part in who I am now and the
mhm.
reason why when I walk the streets of Philadelphia or when I walk into a place in Philadelphia and people recognize me and want to acknowledge and and I still get crazy love in Philadelphia, although it's been 28 years since I caught a football. I still get crazy love in Philadelphia. But if I didn't come from where I came from, I think that I could get carried away with all of that. And I think
Mm,
that that could be a problem. And I've seen it be a problem for some people. So I'm very thankful for the way that I was raised, for the humble beginnings, and for everything that I have now and everything that I've been able to establish, everything that I've really worked hard to get to this point in my life. But during the course of all of that work, it was never really work.
mhm. Cliffhanger there. It was never really work. I can't wait to hear more about that. I think you said some really, really interesting and fascinating elements around what it's like to be a person who's well known and how you've seen that type of attention. You used a really powerful word. You used the word ruin. It can ruin people.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit more about what keeps you grounded. What's protected you from being ruined by that type of attention?
Well, growing up in a house with 9 kids, it's you get some attention, but there's so many people. There's so much, there's only but so much to go around because there's so many people.
I can barely keep track of my 2 children.
Yeah, see? For me, because my father wasn't in the house, my older brothers, I'm the youngest of the 5 boys, and my older brothers, they kept me in check because I was, even at a young age, I was one of these athletes that could do anything. I
Hmm.
was really talented. And the fact that I had to play with older guys most of the time, my older brothers and their friends, just made it tougher for guys my age to compete against me.
Hmm.
But those guys always would grab me in the collar and put me in check. So if I started to think too highly of myself, or if I started to, like, I was never allowed to talk smack at guys. I
Mm.
could run rings around many guys my age, my size, but I wasn't allowed to talk smack because one of my brothers would smack me beside the head.
You get smacked for talking smack.
Yeah, yeah. So I think all of that type of environment, and all of my brothers were really good athletes. They were all great athletes. And I just kind of watched those guys as I was growing up, watch what they did. And I just wanted to do similar to what they did. They were all like really talented. And not only that, they were really good men. And that to me was very important that, they were good examples for me. And I always wanted to be a good example. They were phenomenal men. They and are phenomenal men. My brother, who's 4 years my senior, I remember his senior year in high school, and he was voted most outstanding athlete in the school. And even then, at a young age, I was in my head, when I become a senior, I'm going to do that. And that's what I did. So my senior year, I got that same award, the best athlete in the school.
That's incredible.
And it's a big school. My graduating class was over 700 kids.
So that's quite an honor.
Yeah. But I knew early on that I was really talented in sports. Yep.
So you did know, you did have a sense of your talents early on. And I think what's striking about you saying that is, as I've, watched some news clips and some interviews, about your life and growing up, one of the things that I found really striking was a lot of your coaches early on at that high school age that you were talking about actually said, Mike didn't know how talented he was.
Right.
Did you know then, and you just kept it hidden how much you knew?
No. I knew I was talented, but they saw a different level that I couldn't see. I mean, I could do a lot of things, but they saw like what I was able to do when I got to college without even breaking a stride. Same thing I did in high school, and from college going to the NFL. And that is a major leap. There are so many great athletes that are great collegiate players, but when they get to the professional level, they don't even measure up. I didn't have a speed bump at all. I go from playing, from being an outstanding player in college to right into the NFL. And my second year in the NFL, I led the league in receiving. I was, my second year in the league, I'm the top receiver in the National Football League. So there was not even a speed bump for me. So I think my coaches, even when I was young, could see that, I was gifted, that I had something special, but I didn't see that. I mean, I knew that I could outplay, guys my age that I was playing with, but I didn't see just what was on the horizon. I didn't see that, that it could take me as far as my talent has taken me.
Yeah. You didn't have the bigger picture. They had an expanded aperture.
Listen, I told you, I'm from a little hamlet. That's the name of the town that I'm from, and it is indeed a hamlet.
It's well named.
It's about, they said it's 6,000 people. I don't believe there's 6,000 people in Hamlet.
You think they
Maybe
counted some of them twice?
They counted the dogs and the holiday and all. There's not 6,000 people in Hamlet. But growing up like that, you don't get to see the lifestyle that I've been able to live. You don't get to see anybody unless you're looking at television. So I didn't really have this vision. I couldn't dream as big as my life has become.
So what role do you think, those people who could see, who had the expanded aperture and they could see on the horizon what was possible for you, what was the role of people believing in you and your talents before you completely realized the full complement of your gifts?
What were the roles of those people?
Yeah, like how did having people who believed in you, how did that facilitate your career when there were people who could see what was possible for you before you could see what was possible for you?
Well, I think when I think about that, I think about the one day that I sit down with one of my coaches and he says, this is what you need to do. And the fact that I listened at that moment in that particular meeting made a huge difference in my life. When all the scouts came around to recruit me, all these big Division I schools, and then they looked at my transcript and I wasn't academically eligible, that was a problem. But my football coach, Ron Crawley, sat down and he says, you really should look at doing this for 1 year. I'm like, Coach, that's, and I'm thinking, a whole year? I got to spend a year before I can, that means that it's going to be 5 years before I get to the NFL or to the NBA. Because at that point, I averaged 23 points in basketball. I was the leading scorer in my conference in basketball. So I was thinking basketball, and then I knew that I could have gone to the Olympics in track and field as a high hurdler. So I got all these things going on. And this dude's telling me that I need to take another year. And at the time I was thinking, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. But when you're 18, you think a year is a hell of a long time. So I did listen to him that day. He said, you should consider one of these military academies. Mm-hmm. So I go to, one was Massanutten Military Academy. The other one was Fork Union Military Academy. So I ended up going to Fork Union Military Academy, and the academy really helped me in a lot of ways. It established a discipline that I didn't know. It established a lot of things it was a lifestyle that I wasn't used to, and I was on the dean's list. I was on the honor roll for the first time because the academy forced me to apply myself academically. So I went to school all the time. I didn't miss a lot of days of school, but it was really so that I could go to practice because I wanted to play, because I loved to play and I loved to compete. I wasn't interested in school. But once I got into the academy and I understood the importance of, and they made you, because we had a 2-hour study hall every night, and it was monitored by some of the colonels and the generals. They walked around and make sure that we were on point doing what we should be doing. Just that whole atmosphere and the order that you had to have all your clothes in, not just the clothes hanging in your closet, but your socks and your underwear and everything had to be in a special place, folded a certain way. All of these disciplines that at home I wasn't used to. I didn't have to do that at home. Mm-hmm. But it was something that I needed, and it really made a difference in my life. Mm. Yeah. So I listened to Ron Crawl that day. That's, the bottom line.
Yeah.
When my coach sat me down that day and started talking about these schools, I bought into what he was saying, and he was right. Yeah. That's probably why I'm sitting here talking to you today, because of that one conversation that I had when I listened to my coach.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that fascinating that there are these moments, these key inflection points where things could go one way or the other?
Oh, absolutely. And I know that we all have those in our lives where, if you take one road or you take the other road, and, you just never know.
Yeah.
It's the road less traveled. Is that Robert Frost?
Indeed.
And that road has made all the difference.
It sure has. Were there, if you look back and, you can sort of put your finger on this moment with your coach where you decided to listen, even though a year seemed like an eternity. Were there other key inflection points along the way, sort of intersections where you could have gone right or you could have gone left, and looking back you see that those were also key moments that dramatically impacted your life and being here today?
So that was probably the main one, but there are others that, decisions that I made or didn't make that could have affected even more severely, but that's probably the main one.
Mm-hmm. It's the most important one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it came when you were 17 or 18?
Yep.
So early in life.
Yeah, but he was a guy that we all had a lot of respect for. Mm-hmm. He was a great coach, and he didn't, other than coaching, he didn't say a whole lot, but if he wanted to sit you down and talk to you, you had to understand that was something really important. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it was really important, that he would set me down in his office and just have a one-on-one. I knew it was important.
I see. You talked a little bit about growing up with 8 brothers and sisters. There were 9 of you total. You're the youngest of 5 boys. Mm-hmm. And your father wasn't around by the time you were around.
Correct.
What were some of the what was it like growing up in that environment, and What might have been some of the challenges that you faced as a young child or a young man?
What's interesting is that I knew that there are some things that people in a two-parent family get that I didn't get, but I really don't feel like I missed out on very much. Because, as I said, my older brothers were kind of my role models. They were kind of my lead. I kind of wanted to do what they did and kind of follow them. And they were guys who disciplined me. Even when my mother wasn't around, when she was just trying to make sure that we had food every day. So those guys disciplined me and made sure that I stayed in line. So I I don't know what it's like to grow up in a two-parent household. Didn't have that, so don't know.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be a two-parent household necessarily. I loved what you were saying about growing up with your brothers and how they kept you in check. And then as your life has progressed, that's part of what's kept you grounded,
Sure.
was having this experience of other people keeping you in check, which it sounds like, allowed you to then sort of keep yourself in check, right? Were there other sort of learnings or elements like that that as you look back, maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but later on, those became helpful or valuable to you?
Well, the first and biggest influence of my entire life was my mother. My brothers, yeah, they had a big part in it, but more than anything, my mother and the way she worked, the way she dealt with people. So I had someone in my life every day, my mother, who showed me how you're supposed to treat people, regardless of who they are. So, I go to Philadelphia and I get to know the owner of the team, and I have a relationship with him. Well, that guy that's responsible for washing my socks, I have a special relationship with him as well. And, just to have that, to be able to watch that every day, the way she handled people, the way she respected people, and it didn't matter if they were one of her bosses or someone hungry coming off the street needing a plate of food, didn't matter. You respect people because that's what you do. And probably more than anyone, that lady poured into my life in she's a big part of who I am. Yeah. I remember one of the biggest compliments I ever got was my pastor said to me, and I was young, that you really do have the spirit of your mother. And I started thinking about that. Like, wow. So better than any touchdown I've scored or any of that nonsense, that to me is really big.
And what was it about that was so big for you?
Because that's the best person I've ever met, known in my life, my mother. So for someone to tell me or to compare me to her in a positive light, that's big for me.
And was she still?
I'm a mama's boy, if you can't tell.
I was starting to pick that up
I'm a mama's boy.
slowly but surely.
Yeah.
How long did you have her with you?
57 years. Yeah. Lost my mom a couple of years ago. Yeah.
She was around for a long time.
Long time. She was 94
Wow.
when she passed. Yeah. Yep. She lived a good, long life.
She sure did.
We made her stop working the year I got drafted, 1982. I remember it well. Go tell mom to put in her notice that she's done. She put in her notice. That was her last day of work.
How did it feel for you to be able to say that?
Listen, I knew what I was going to do. I knew as soon as I got to the NFL, first thing I was going to do was put her in a house of her own, and that's what I did. I bought her a house. The next thing was, well, no, kind of going on at the same time. I told my sister, take mom, you guys go look for a house. And the other thing was, tell mom to put in her notice because she's done work. And that's when she stopped working. And she just started doing like community stuff, and she's heavily involved in the church already. So just doing that kind of stuff, the things that she really enjoyed doing, and not having to go out and scrape and try and feed us anymore.
Right.
Got that covered.
Got that covered.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to give her that gift?
There's nothing better than that. For me to be able to kind of give to her after watching the way she sacrificed for us, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing that I'll ever do that's better than that.
Would you say that is your proudest career moment?
If that's a career moment, yeah, sure.
Do you think of it as a career moment? How do you think about it?
I just think of it as part of my life. You know, it's more related to my life aside from my career. And to me, they're separate tracks. But that's more my real life. Yeah.
Was that your proudest real life accomplishment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That I could say, you don't have to work anymore. Here, this is yours. You don't have to worry about the note. You don't have to worry about anything. You just enjoy this. Yeah.
What was her response?
Doesn't get better than that.
It doesn't get better than that.
No. She was a bit overwhelmed, but we kind of saw it coming. Because, you know, after my sophomore year, I started to get a lot of attentions from the NFL. So I knew that I was going to be a high draft pick. Didn't know where I was going to go. And, you know, there was a lot surrounding where you go and how that all unfolds when draft day comes around. And I knew that there are a lot of teams that are interested in me, but you can only go to one team. So when it finally happened, we kind of knew it was going to happen, but then it's like, okay, now let's get it done.
So what were some of the intricacies leading up to the draft? How did you as a player prepare for that? What's happening behind the scenes? You knew you were going to be a high draft pick, you said.
Yep.
I wonder if you knew it was going to be number 20 in the first round.
Actually, I thought it would be sooner than that.
You thought it'd be sooner.
Because there were 3 wide receivers went ahead of me in the draft in 1982. I remember it really well because, in the end, I think you could put all of their stats together and none of them did what I did. But there were 3 guys that went ahead of me. There was Perry Tuttle out of Clemson. There was Lindsey Scott out of Georgia. And there was Anthony Hancock out of Tennessee. I thought that I would be drafted by the New Orleans Saints. They ended up drafting Scott. I didn't expect Buffalo, but Buffalo moved up in the draft before the Eagles, and they stole Perry Tuttle because they knew that the Eagles were interested in Perry Tuttle. So then I was kind of, what do you call it? When you're left over.
What do you want to call it?
So I was kind of left over and still, I'm a first round draft pick. So I was excited. I was happy. I didn't know all these things that were going on, in the war room when the Eagles were. So when the Eagles were on the clock, Buffalo knew exactly what they wanted to do. So Buffalo jumped ahead and switched the pick right before the Eagles pick so that they could steal Perry Tuttle. Perry Tuttle was in Buffalo for 2 years, didn't do diddly, and ended up going to Canada. And
the rest, as they say, is history.
I came to Philadelphia, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a consolation prize after Perry Tuttle was gone. That's the word I was looking for.
The consolation prize.
Yeah.
And so did you come, how did that experience of feeling like a consolation prize, how
I
did
didn't
that,
know. See, I didn't, like I said, I
you
didn't
didn't
know all
know
of the
any of
things that,
this?
I didn't know. All I knew was that the Philadelphia Eagles called me and they said, "Are you ready to be an Eagle?" And I said, "Yes, I am. Pack a bag. There's a ticket waiting for you at the airport." I was in Raleigh, North Carolina at my girlfriend's apartment when I got the call. Pack a bag. There's a plane waiting for you. Boom, boom. So I jump in my car, go over to the Raleigh airport, fly to Philadelphia. I get off the plane, and when I come through that little tunnel thing off the plane, when I first walked in, I couldn't see anything because there were cameras everywhere, and they just covered my face. It was like a real deer in headlights. That's the first time I realized what that meant. That was a deer in headlights. I have all of these cameras in my face, and I'm just a young kid getting off the plane, and Dick Vermeil was there because he drafted me and a couple of the other team executives, and you go through the whole process. And it's something that's hard to describe. Because as a boy growing up playing sports, and most boys, we've got these guys that I want to be like Bob Hayes. I want to be like Gare Sayers. I want to be like Lou Alcindor. You have those guys that you emulate. When you're a kid, you want to be one of those guys. I got to be one of those guys. I'm living the dream.
You are living the dream. You are living the dream. Who did you want to emulate and why?
I don't even know. I mean, I would run around playing ball. You would save people, but I really didn't have. I was really a big basketball head when I was a kid. I loved basketball. And everyone where I grew up, everyone thought that I would go away to play basketball, not football. But just turns out football worked out for me.
Football worked out. So, our podcast Grow Forward is about this concept of resilience.
Yes.
Right? And it gives people like you, Mike, who are well-known, the opportunity to tell their lesser well-known resilience story. One of the concepts of resilience that we've researched is this practice of possibility, being able to see multiple endpoints or being able to see multiple options, either different sets of goals or different ways to get to kind of the same endpoint or the same goal. I think you said something really interesting earlier, which is you talked about you knew pretty early on that you had a lot of options. You could head toward the NBA, you could head toward the NFL, you could think about the Olympics and track and field.
Yep.
Could you talk a little bit more about those possibilities that emerged for you and how you made the choice or how your path led you to the NFL?
Well, so I knew that all of these things were possible. Even when I was at North Carolina State, I ran track, and because the track coach knew that I could run track, that I could get places and get points for the team. So many times I didn't even really practice that much for track. So for the conference track meet, I would get out of spring training and I would train for 2 weeks just to run in the conference meet and get a first or second place or somewhere I could place. I could get points. I knew that I had all of this stuff, but it was just a matter of, what will I get the most out of? I knew I could play basketball, especially when I got to NC State. I played with all those guys that won the national championship, and, I could play as well as anybody. But when I looked at me, and physically, I'm 6'3". I don't have the best handle. So at 6'3", you really need to have a handle. You really need to be able to distribute the ball. A 6'3" scorer, you're not going to go very far at that point. That's what I was thinking. So track and field, track would be great, but you don't really make the money in track and field. That was my thinking. Football, I could outrun nearly everybody. I can catch. I'm strong. I'm tough. My brothers beat me around, and my brothers and their friends, they beat me around enough. You're not going to punk me. I'm not. So I just figured in football, that's my way to go. I can outrun people. I can catch the ball. I'm tough enough to play against anybody. I know the game. I could get to the next level in football. That's kind of how I figured it out. Basketball, I just wasn't. If I was 3 inches tall, I would have probably gone to the NBA, maybe even 2. But I just figured at 6'3", I'm better off running a football, catching a football, outrunning people, and doing that whole bit. So that's kind of how I made the decision. When I went to the military academy, I kind of had to decide then, because the basketball recruits were coming. I remember when Lefty Driesell, who was the coach at the University of Maryland, he came to work out the kid that was our big guy, Dale Solomon, 6'8", power forward, center. He ended up going to Europe playing for a lot of years. So he came to work out Dell. But they asked me to come in for the workout just because they needed to have other people. And at the end of the workout, Lefty Driesell wanted to talk to me as well as talking to Dale Solomon. And after that conversation with him, I told my basketball coach that just to tell all the basketball recruiters that I wasn't going to play basketball. I'm going to go to college to play football. I've decided that I'm going to do that. And I don't want to have conversations with anybody else about basketball.
And how old were you when you...
18.
You were 18.
Yeah.
What's it like to look back now and think about that 18-year-old and his level of strategy, how you thought through those options, and perhaps the gumption of that 18-year-old to say, hey, tell all those NBA recruiters I don't want to talk to them?
Well, first it was college, but I didn't want to waste their time. I didn't, because I knew that I was going to go somewhere to school to play football. And the only place I was going to go other than to one of the ACC schools would have been Southern Cal. And I never saw a Southern Cal guy come on our campus, and that's the only reason I stayed on the East Coast. And I went back to, see, Fork Union is in Virginia. And I said, and I was a bit homesick too. And it's all boys, and my girlfriend from high school, she was still around down there. So I'm going back to North Carolina. And so I decided I'd go to NC State. My brother was at the University of North Carolina at the time, and he wouldn't sway me one way or the other. No, you make the decision yourself. I'm not going to, so he didn't. And on my recruiting trips, I was sold on NC State.
What was it about NC State that sold you?
A lot of it was the guys. So 2 of the guys from my high school, they were already there. And I just enjoyed the company of those guys there probably. And it wasn't the smartest decision, I should say, because the offense that they ran didn't really fit my skill set. So if someone was making a decision for me, they probably would not have chosen NC State. But I still got to show my skills, and I was still a first-round draft pick. So they'll find you. If you have it, they'll find you.
If you have it, they'll find you.
Yeah.
If you have it, they'll find you.
Yeah, they found me.
Did you ever worry that you might miss your opportunity?
No. Nope.
You never worried that you had it, but they wouldn't find you?
Nope. No. Because at every level, things worked out for me. Just like in high school, when I got to Fork Union, I was most valuable in track. Probably the same in football. Basketball, I was really talented. I already knew that. And my football coach at Fork Union, he thought that I had professional skills then. And we played against freshman teams for Division I schools. And we played against Virginia Military, VMI. We played against Navy, Army, their freshman class. And a lot of Division I schools, their freshman class, that was our competition. And I had no problems. Yeah. Yeah, just touched, and you're going to be gifted. You're going to have a lot of stuff to work with. I was blessed in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever run into people who were envious of your skills or not supportive?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's always going to happen. But that's their problem, not mine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That wasn't yours to take on.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't have to. And I'm that way still. I know that there's always going to be haters and people that, but I'm not going to let them rain on my parade. Why should they ruin my day? I don't put a lot of weight into that. They're gonna, never have. I'll never put a lot of weight into that. No. Keep marching forward.
Yeah. A lot of people talk about, when they sort of reach for that brass ring of success, whatever industry or field, that they're in or sporting arena, they talk about sometimes not having the support that they wish they would have had, right? And the sort of need to believe intrinsically in themselves,
Right.
without a lot of other people around them, even some of the people that they would expect would believe in them.
Sure.
How did you feel like, your support network, supported you? And were you in a position where you had to, at times, intrinsically believe in your own skills when you were the only one?
I just believe that early on, a lot of the things that you need, you are equipped with. I just think that, and you see a lot of people, not just in sports, but people who, as the term that you use, people who are resilient. There are a lot of ways that become a part of your DNA. And I think for me, early on, just having to live the way I lived, do some of the things that I had to do, learn some lessons that I had to learn. I think all of those things make you resilient, whether if it's in sports or if it's in some other walk of life. I think you learn things early that teach you how to bounce back. And, they use the football metaphor very often because you get knocked down a lot. And what do? You're not going to just lay there. You got to pick yourself up. You got to get ready for the next play. So I just believe that you learn all of those things very early.
Yeah.
How to pick yourself up and how to bounce back and do what's necessary to keep moving forward. And football is such a great example. And that's why, I see how a lot of companies now, they want to hire people with a sports background because they're used to competition. They're used to having the wins and losses, and they're used to the discipline that it takes to keep going, to keep moving forward. But it really, for me, it goes all the way back to, as a very young person, learning how to be resilient and how to be strong and just keep moving forward. There are always going to be things that can throw you off, but it's important to stay focused. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Nelson Mandela who said, don't judge me by my successes. You know this quote?
Yeah.
Don't judge me by my successes. Judge me by the number of times I fell down and got up again.
Sure.
Could you talk about one of those kind of key lessons, one of those key moments in greater specificity, one of those times when you fell down, but instead of laying on the field, you got back up again, that taught you about resilience?
Well, you get to a point where there's no turning back. There's no option. You got to keep moving forward. So there is no plan B. When you get knocked down, you got to get up and get back in the fight. There's no plan B. Let me think. Like my first major injury, there's no way that I'm going to just stop. First major injury, then fix me. Tell me what the rehab protocol is. Tell me what the plan is for my rehab. Tell me when you expect me to be back in full strength. Just lay it out for me and let's get to work. That's just kind of the mentality you have to have. There's no plan B. There's just moving forward.
Yeah. I think that's a really fascinating concept to me, actually, because on the one hand, I believe in the power of choice, right? And the power to make a decision. And so many people will say, I didn't have a choice or I didn't have another option. And sometimes that is used in the sense of, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go on. I wasn't able to. I didn't make a good choice because I didn't have another option.
Yeah.
And then I think what's really fascinating about people who are resilient like yourself is they actually talk about not having a choice, but not seeing any other choice but moving forward, but standing up.
I think to me, many times that was the only choice, was to keep moving forward. I get it. I get it when everything is completely shut down. So like when it was time for me to retire from the game, it was time to retire. And then you set your focus on what's next in your life. But until I got to the point where I realized that my legs, my knees are shot. They've been cut too many times. Those early injuries that I had, there was no option. Just let me know, when do you think that I can rehab this and be able to play again? That was the marching order. Didn't want to even think about, okay, it's time for me to do something else. But then when after 9 years in the league, I knew it was time to do something else. You only get one body, you only get one life, and I knew that my body was starting to fail me, and I couldn't do maybe I could have played a little bit more, but I couldn't do what I was accustomed to doing. Then it's time to go do something else.
So before we talk about your retirement, which I think is really fascinating, let's talk a little bit about your time in the league. I'd love to know a little bit more about that first injury to start with, perhaps. And maybe before we talk about the first injury, you get off the plane, there's lots of cameras in your face. You understand for the first time what the expression deer in headlights means.
Yep.
Yeah. What happens next in joining the NFL?
What happens next is you go into a room with all of these with the rest of the cattle, with the rest of the herd, and they start to thin out the herd to see who can play and who can't play. That's what the training camps are all about. Training camps are about finding out who can and who cannot. Who can you count on? So they beat you up in training camps. I mean, they beat you up and then they beat you down and then they beat you back up again. And it's all to figure out who's tough enough to withstand the test of time. Who can I count on when things are down, when your back's against the wall? How many people in this room can I count on that are going to go to war with me? That's what training camp's all about. You got to figure that out. Who's tough enough to last and who's tough enough to endure all of this stuff. That's what it's all about. So I go to training camp and you kind of weed out the guys that were really great collegiate players, but they're not cut out for the NFL. You weed them out really quickly. And probably within 2 or 3 weeks, you already know that, okay, this person is just here for a little while because we need bodies, but he's not one that's going to be here when it's all said and done. You start to weed them out very quickly. That's what that whole process is about. But when I got to the NFL, I was ready for the NFL.
What do you think prepared you for the NFL? You know, you mentioned there's such a high failure rate.
Yeah.
And you didn't even hit a speed bump, you said.
My older brothers, their buddies. Yeah, because, at like 15, 16, even in the summer, they had a men's summer league baseball that traveled around and played against other cities. It's like guys from the old Negro League that played baseball, and they loaded up in cars or an old bus, and they traveled around from city to city. They were doing that where I grew up. And at 15 and 16, I had to play with those guys. And I'm standing at the plate with a bat in my hand, and there's a 25-year-old pitcher on the mound, firing fastballs and curveballs at me. And I'm 16 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that stuff, these guys. So here's something interesting. When I went into the North Carolina, the State of North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, and I talked about all of that kind of stuff because all of those guys, like, I'm here because of all of those people. And all of those people are a part of this award, this thing that because all of these people affected my life.
Yeah.
All of these people made me ready so that when I became a professional, I was ready because of all the things that they took me through when I was a kid. I didn't have one of these moments where the NFL was too big for me. I never had that because of all of those moments when I was a kid, when guys were taking me through some of the biggest moments that when I really was scared. So when I'm 15, 16 years old and you got a 25-year-old on the mound throwing heat, that was nerve-wracking. But that prepared me for all of these other things. When I became a professional, I wasn't really bothered by it, any of that stuff.
Would you think of those things as challenges that you faced early on, or how would you sort of characterize those moments that prepared you for later on?
When I was young?
Yeah.
That was just sharpening me. That was just, that was just making me sharp, all of that stuff. So that when I did get into those moments where most guys, the bright lights would bother them, I wasn't bothered by a lot of stuff because I'd already gone through having to face some very difficult situations with talented guys who ended up being at, Division I AA or one of these levels just outside of Major League Baseball.
Did you have the presence of mind in the moment when you're a 15 or a 16-year-old and you're on the mound and the pitcher's 25 years old and he's throwing heat, he's bringing the heat? Did you have the presence of mind to think to yourself, this is preparing me for the future? What was going through your head at that time?
All I wanted to do was get the bat on the ball. I wasn't thinking about that. First of all, I didn't want to get hit. That's last thing I wanted was somebody to hit me.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing was I just want to get the bat on the ball. Because if I can get the bat on it, I can get to first base.
Yeah.
If I'm fast enough, I can get down to first base if I can get the bat on the ball. So that's all I thought about.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff, and it's just, I look at a lot of young kids and I watch them training and playing games, and it's all just preparing you for other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't know it when you're that young, but it does prepare you for other things.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about that because, that's another one of the tenets of resilience, right? Is in the midst of the challenge or in the midst of the preparation, in the midst of the sharpening, if you will, we don't always realize, we typically don't realize that we're being sharpened or prepared. We're just thinking about, let me hit this ball so I can get to first base and, not get hit, right? It's a much more sort of myopic view.
Sure.
And what I love about resilience and what I love about what you're describing is in fact, it isn't, for a period of time, sometimes many years later, where we can look back and say, oh, that moment was giving me this nugget. That moment
That's
was
right.
giving me this gift that I now have, here today.
And that leads me to a thought. There's a motivational speaker that I listen to. His name is Eric Thomas. He calls himself E.T. So in E.T. talks about your why. And, I've heard him speak to different groups, and especially with young athletes. He poses that question to them. What's your why? What's your motivation? Why do you do this? And it's something that I didn't quite understand when I was young, my why. But when I look back and I look at the opportunities that I've had, when I got a chance to go to Fork Union, then when I got a scholarship to go to North Carolina State, I didn't want to blow it. I didn't want to screw up these opportunities. So I guess I'm saying that to say my why was probably the fear of failing and having to go back to Hamlet rather than I'll jump in my car and I drive to Hamlet whenever I choose to go there, on my own terms rather than being forced to because I screwed up an opportunity that don't many people get. So then you make it to the NFL. It didn't matter to me who lined up in front of me. Like, dude, you better get ready. You're going to have a long day because I'm about to tear your... Is this PG?
I won't let my children listen.
So, listen, if a guy lined up on me, you got to know, you better be at your very best because I'm about to try to rip your heart out. And that was just kind of the attitude. I'm not going back to Hamlet. I'm not going to be forced to go back to Hamlet. When I go back to Hamlet, it's going to be on my own terms. That was my mentality. So my why was the fact that I got an opportunity here that not many people get. This is an opportunity that so many people would break an arm for. And you're going to stand in front of me and try and deny me? Not going to happen. So that fear of failing was something that was such a driving force for me that I wanted to make sure that that I'd lick this thing. I got this opportunity and I'm going to lick it. That was kind of the way I approached things. I was never boastful about it, never bragged about it, never even talked about it. But if you lined up on me, it came out. That's what I'm about. I'm about to break you down. Yep. So when E.T., and so when I talk to kids, that's something that I'll bring up to them. Like, think about this. What's your why? Why are you doing this? What motivates you to do this? You want to be on the team so you get the girls? You want to be on the team so that you walk around in your leather jacket and people know who you are? What's your why? And you have to think about things like that. I love to put that on a young man's head so that he can think about what he's doing, why he's doing it. Later I realized, I look back, as you said earlier, when you look back and you can see different phases in your life, and now I have a chance to do that. That was it. Because I was, growing up, I had to do a lot of different things that I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to have to, like, some of the work, like cleaning bricks or collecting bottles or working in the fields just to get a couple of bucks in your pocket. I knew that wasn't me. I knew I had to do it then because I wanted to get $5 or $2 in my pocket. I had to do it. It was a means to an end, but that's not me. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm going to be. And so when I got an opportunity to get out of there, as much as I love where I grew up, I'll go when I choose to go. Because these opportunities that are in front of me, I'm about to kick the door in. Yeah.
You rose to the occasion.
Oh yeah. But then again, it goes back to all that sharpening that those guys like poured into me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think it's fascinating and very vulnerable in some ways for you to share that really if you peel back all the layers, at least early on,
Yep.
your why was really being driven by a fear of failure,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
How did you, fear is an incredibly powerful emotion. It can drive us, it can incapacitate us, right? How are you able to harness the fear of failing for your success and not allow that fear to incapacitate you in some way?
It's a good question. So I think this whole competition thing, I think you learn how to block out certain elements and focus in on what needs to take place. So the great players, so you can watch some people like a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. He's a good example. Nick Foles in the Super Bowl in that stretch. You watch those guys, all of this chaos going on around them. There's so many things that are flying around their heads, so much chaos. But if you check their pulse, they're probably real steady. It's probably really calm because that's what you have to do. Even in the midst of all sorts of chaos, you got to be able to calm yourself and focus in. That's why practice is so important because you got to rehearse those things so that when there's all this stuff going on around you, your focus has to be on, that step that I have to make or that move that I have to make because you've practiced this, you've rehearsed it so many times. And if you can keep that single focus and get it right, then the band strikes up. Then the cheerleaders are screaming and the crowd goes wild and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's being able to calm yourself and singularly focus on the task.
There's this it's a relatively new concept called the adversity quotient. And so we've talked a lot in
Adversity quotient.
adversity quotient.
Okay.
It's AQ. So we've talked a lot about, intelligence quotient, IQ, why people are successful.
Yep.
Emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, EQ, right? And what's emerging in some of the literature now is this concept of AQ, or the adversity quotient. And what it's about is really similar to what you're talking about. I'd love your take. The adversity quotient is about the extent to which people can tolerate being in an environment where they're continually exposed to fear and failure, right? And so not just on the football field, but we know there's a high degree of complexity in business. Things are very tumultuous across the globe, right? And so as you think about your football career and your own resilience and that of those around you, did you find that people were more successful who could remain in an environment or remain connected with fear and failure for a prolonged period of time?
More successful. Wait, once again.
So this notion of the adversity quotient is that people who are more adept
Yep.
at remaining in contact with adversity,
Yep.
people who are able to, for a prolonged period of time, face down these really complex and difficult experiences of fear and failure, that these are the people that are ultimately able to succeed because they're able to remain in an environment that is uncomfortable.
Without a doubt. No. I think when you've gone through it enough times, it's not that you get comfortable with going through it, but the next time is a little bit easier to handle and to take, because you're able to get through it the first time. We've gone through a lot. But
you and I, do you mean?
yeah, we all have.
Have we?
Yes,
you mean that
we all have gone through a lot in our lives.
You mean the global we? Got it.
But you know what separates people are the people that are resilient enough to withstand, that have enough backbone that they can keep getting up when, when I was 6 years old, the little shack that we lived in was burned to the ground. Everything that we owned, except what we were wearing that day, was gone up in that fire. How do you handle that? When you're my mother, you've got 9 kids. I think 2 might have been gone, like already moved out. At least one, my older brother, James. But how do you handle that? Now, that to me is really showing resilience. When you're able to bounce back from a situation like that. We were spread it out for a little while at different families in my church, living there until my mom could get us all back together in one place. But that to me is very, very difficult to deal with. How do you even start to deal with that? And then pull it back together.
Right.
And all of these kids end up graduating high school, except my oldest brother. He moved away. And 7 of the 9 went to some college or university somewhere. 6 of the 9 graduated college. How do you do that? How do you pull that back together and have the type of success? So that's what fascinates me. People like my mother. Yeah, I played ball. People like my mother who can raise kids and pour into them the stuff that she poured into us that would give us enough to have the successes that we've had. That fascinates me.
Yeah.
Someone who can do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't get it. I have 2 kids, and I'm just hoping that they stay alive. I'm just hoping that that they become nice, productive young men and have good lives.
Yeah.
How do you do what my mother did?
Yeah.
I can catch a ball. I can outrun people. Yeah, to me, that's no big deal. How do you do what she did? And all of these like really good people that she raised. I remember when they had the service after she passed away. The people in that town, they'd never seen anything like it. It's like some rock star came from the town and they having this big ceremony to memorialize this person. And it's my mom.
Yeah.
People came from, I've never seen anything like it. And no one in that town had ever seen anything like it. The effect that she had on that town and the people in that town. We're talking about, me and sports and all that, but it goes well beyond that. It goes so much deeper than that. My life goes a whole lot deeper in the fact that I could outrun people and I could catch a football. See, it's simple yet complicated at the same time.
That's right. That's the best way. It's the best way. That's incredible.
Okay, good night, boys and girls.
All right, good night. It's been fun. Good night and good luck. No, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and because we're live, I can think about it. Or because we're not live, I can think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, my reality is I'm very fortunate that I had, that I was blessed with the mother that I had and with the surroundings that I had, and I had the right people to shape me as a young man. And because of those people, the way they shaped me, I turned out all right. Just hoping I can, and I'm hoping that I have given enough to my sons, like some of the things that were given to me, so that they're well equipped, that they end up being, well respected, good men.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the 5 practices of particularly resilient people is this practice of connection, which is about having or creating a support system outside of ourselves, but also being connected to ourselves and knowing ourselves deeply. So you've talked a bit about, or quite a bit actually, about how your mother played a significant role in your brothers and in your family growing up. As you think about your career and some of those key inflection points of entering into the NFL, transitioning, from the league into retirement, creating and recreating your identity as the person you are. Could you talk a little bit about those connected relationships and how those relationships supported and helped mold you and expand you?
Well, for me, I keep going back to the beginning because it all has an effect on, like, how I was able to transition from football to business to the broadcast booth to television. It's all interconnected, and still there's that element of fear. There's still that why. I get an opportunity to work in the broadcast booth with Merrill Reese, and you're talking about an icon in the broadcast industry. You're talking about one of the greatest voices in all of sports, and I get an opportunity to work with him as an analyst on radio. I had no idea what I was doing. When I first started, I was horrible. I had no clue. But after my first year, I studied people, and I started to pick it up. I went to NFL Films, and I got tapes of people that were doing the job that I should be doing, that I just botched up the entire season. And I started to just take information, and I started to write stuff, and I started to understand what the listening audience needed to get. All of this is stuff that was acquired years ago in me just learning how to be me. But I have this opportunity once again to work with Merrill, and I didn't want to blow it. I wanted to lick it. So I started to do my homework. I started to do my research, and I figured it out. And 22 years later, I'm still in that same seat, working side by side with him, doing the Eagles radio broadcast, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a great life. So yeah, I have recreated myself a couple of different times. I've got a couple of other things that are going on in my life. But it's still, to me, it goes back to the fundamentals and the things that I was taught as a young kid. And the fact that I've put myself in a position because I made good on that place. So when I get to this place, if I make good at this place, then maybe I'll get another opportunity. So it's about being a good steward of what you have. So, and being a good steward in what I have, it opens up other opportunities. And if I'm a good steward there, it's going to open up other opportunities. And that's my answer.
So I love what you were saying there about, your why and being in a place with Merrill where once again you were faced with this fear of failure. And I was curious earlier when you were talking about the fear of failure of having to go back to Hamlet, not on your own terms, right? And that was your initial driver. Has fear of failure continued to be your why over time of what's driven you, or has that evolved in some way?
I think it will always evolve. I think whatever your why is today, 10 10 years from now, not necessarily your why. And no, it's not my why today, but it was. And especially when you get a new opportunity. When you get a new opportunity, you don't want to mess it up. But my why today, completely different. I'm looking at riding off into the sunset. So everything now is kind of in preparation to kick back, relax, play golf, ride off into the sunset.
You've got a big birthday coming up next week.
What?
What?
Yep.
You got a
Listen, I'm embracing this thing. I'll be 60 next week.
60.
Yep. And I'm embracing it. I'm all about it. Yep. Turning 60.
Turning 60.
Yeah. I used to think that's really old.
Yeah.
It is. It's not really old. It's just old.
It's just old. It's not really old anymore.
60 is the new 40.
Yeah.
What a lie that is. Such a lie. 60 is 60. I'm going to be 60 and I'm happy and proud of it.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Listen, I started saying that I was 62 months ago. I'm already wrapping my head around 60.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the importance of readiness and preparation. You're ready for 60.
It's all good.
Yeah, yep. 60 is going to be ready for you.
I'm happy to be here. As long as I can still hit a golf ball and I can work out once in a while, life is good.
Yeah. So as you transition into this new decade of life, what do you think what would you like your why to be? What would you like your why to become? And are there still things you're dreaming about doing that you haven't done yet?
Nope. I've done it. Been there, done it. So, I'm heavily involved now in the First Tee program.
In the what?
The First Tee of Greater Philadelphia.
First Tee.
Yeah, the First Tee. So the First Tee is really centered around getting kids involved in golf, particularly kids who wouldn't normally have an opportunity to be around the golf course or the golf community. And quite honestly, the golf is the hook to get kids in. We're really trying to build better citizens, better people. So you get kids involved in the First Tee program, in the golf program, and you start teaching them core values that they can, that'll enrich their lives throughout their lives. That'll teach them how to be better people. That's what the First Tee program is all about. So I'm involved in the First Tee. That's my main charity now, but it's more than that. That's my main mission, to get a lot of these kids, especially from underprivileged areas, communities like the one that I grew up in, giving them an opportunity to touch some of the people that are involved in the game of golf. Because I just think that that's a great environment for young people to learn and grow. So as my why changes, I want to be more involved in that sort of thing. I'll get to the point where, work is not that big of an issue for me anymore, and I don't want to work forever. I'd rather just be a service and help out in areas where I can help. That's kind of my plan. Without going into the details of it, that's kind of my plan, is to, in a few years, just get more involved in servicing areas where people are focusing on kids and trying to enrich the lives of kids. Yep.
And how would you encapsulate that in a why statement? My why is, what is it becoming?
Giving back.
Giving back.
Yeah. I am richly blessed in so many ways, and I want to pay it forward. I want to give some of this back too. And I've been doing that for a while, but I want to get to a point where I'm not so involved in anything other than that. Yep.
I love that. Giving back. We talked a moment ago about connection and the importance of relationships. And
yes.
And you mentioned that you hoped that you've you've instilled some of the values and lessons that you have and that your mother gave to you into your sons.
Yes.
If you have done that, what would that be?
Just good people. Just to the core, good people. We all have faults. None of us are perfect, but just core good people that are concerned about others, not just so caught up in themselves, but people who have a heart for other people. And just good citizens. Respectful. And I think I've done that. I think they're very good men. They're very respectful. They're caring people. To me, that's really important.
Great. Is there anything else you want to tell us that you didn't?
I told you everything.
All right. I'm just
I don't have anything left.
Nothing left. No skeletons in the closet, are you sure?
Well, yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
We all do. But this is not the skeleton podcast.
Oh, that's true. We'll have to start another podcast to talk about those. Beautiful. Well, it's been wonderful to spend time with you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for stopping by our show. Wonderful lessons and knowledge that you have shared and imparted.
Pretty cool stuff. I like what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, sir. All right. All right. So something that you shared with me was the average NFL player
Yes.
is in the league for 4 seasons.
Less than.
Less than
3
4.
point something. I don't
3
even know the
point
exact
something.
number, but yeah, less than 4 years.
Less than 4 years. 3 point something. You played for 9 seasons.
I'm special.
Indeed. Indeed. I hope we've proven that on this. It was a proof of concept. If there was any question. What type of resilience do you think is required of a player who stays longer than 3 point something seasons?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to be awfully lucky, because it's a real battle of attrition. Your body, when you play that game, your body's going to break at some point. And you have to be awfully lucky to, first of all, play long enough that you can get a chance to play in the NFL, but then lucky enough that you're not severely injured to the point where you can't play any longer. So first of all, it's lucky. And then the second thing is understanding how to take care of yourself, how to take care of your body so that you can get up the next day, you can get up the next week and be able to play and be at full strength. And be at peak performance on Sundays. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot goes into the discipline of preparing each and every day, the way you eat, the way you sleep, the amount of rest that you get. And so I kind of tried to stay in tune to all of those things because I realized that they were important.
Interesting.
But it really begins with being lucky because everybody's going to get hurt. If you play the game long enough, you're going to get hurt. You're going to break something. You're going to have some surgeries. And I went through all of that.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to play for 9 years.
Yeah. You started to talk a little bit about your first injury.
Yes.
And what that experience was like for you.
Oh, you came back to that.
I did, indeed.
So the first main injury, God, there's a real story around this one. I broke my leg.
What bone in your leg did you break?
A fibula. So, I run a slant route, and if the ball is just right here where it should be, I catch it, I run into the end zone. Ball is high, I got to go up and make a circus catch. I come down in the safety, plants right into my leg, snap my fibula. I had to leave. Interesting thing about that game, 9 years in the league, that is the one game that my mother attended.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, it's right. My mom came to one game.
And that was that game.
And that one game, I broke my leg.
Oh.
So, Mom, I'm sorry, but you can't go anymore. You can't come to any more games.
Oh, you like pinned it on her, like it was her fault for being there.
No, it was the quarterback's fault for throwing the ball up here where he should have just put him in the numbers. But yeah, so yeah. But yeah, I broke my leg in that game and, just kind of fighting back from that. It was a challenge, but like I said, there was no looking left or right. It was straight ahead. What's the rehab? What's the, when am I going to be back?
Yeah.
What are we doing today? Let's get it done. That's kind of the approach.
Yeah. And how many seasons had you played when your mom came and you broke your leg?
That was year 7.
It was year 7.
Yeah. So my mom came to one game in college.
Uh-huh.
I suffered a major concussion. I got knocked flat.
Oh my gosh.
My mom came to one game in the NFL.
Right.
She came to Vet Stadium once. On a slant route, I got my leg broke.
Never again.
That's why she always wanted to sit home. My mom didn't, like when I played Little League, she didn't want to come because it was too rough.
Yeah.
High school, she didn't want to come. It was too rough. When I finally got on television, she would watch, but covering her eyes the entire time she's watching because it was too rough for her.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Don't you think it would have been more polite if she just closed her eyes instead of covering them?
Yeah, how about that? She should have just closed her eyes. You're funny. No. So when I'm playing, it doesn't matter who's there. I'm in the moment. It didn't matter who was in the stands or who was anywhere. I was just going for it. And like I said, if Randall had just thrown it right here, instead of throwing it up, so I got to go up and make a circus catch, I score a touchdown. And, the band strikes up and cheerleaders and da-da-da. Well, I'm glad I got to tell you that story.
I'm glad you did too.
All right.
Thank you, sir.